right, guys. Well, it's 6:07 and we've got a couple more people, but let's not wait. They can come in when they want. We're so excited that you're here. I'll reintroduce all of us for our newcomers. For those of you who have now heard me introduce us many times, you can tune out and start drinking. But my name is Gina Boucher. My partner is Aaron Lober. He's in another one of the screens. But I'm leading this along with my friends Allison and Mike. I'll introduce them in a moment, but I own WINECULT. WINECULT is a boutique wine club and concierge service that delivers wine directly to your door. We focus on small, sustainably made wines and unique varieties from all over the world. And this is now probably the year anniversary of us doing these virtual tastings. We did not do this before COVID, although it has completely transformed our business. And we have now done over 40 of these virtual tastings. So we're super excited that you all are here. And I got connected with Mike and Allison in my previous job that I was actually able to quit now that I'm full-time in my own company. Mike came in and did a wine tasting with me at a winery in Los Olivos. And he said, hey, let's do tastings together. And I said, okay. And he brought in Allison. So Allison is the owner of Please the Palate, which specializes in marketing and event planning. She's a columnist for the Napa Valley Register. She's a host of the podcast called Wine Soundtrack USA. And she's the co-host of a video series on YouTube called Crush on This. Mike Landucci, raise your hand, Mike. He is the creator of Wine Weirdos, which are 1-minute videos of wine reviews that help you discover unique wines from all over the world, including some of these wines and some of the past wines that we've done in these tastings together as well. His tastings can be found on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And together, the three of us, like I mentioned, this is our third tasting together. And we have been, what?
Our third series.
Yes, you're right. This is the third series that we have done together, in which we have visited Austria, New Zealand, South Africa, Italy, Portugal, Australia, and multiple places within California. So in this series, we are visiting the old world, starting in Croatia tonight. So like I've mentioned a couple of times already, please don't worry about waiting for us to start talking about the wines. We will discuss the white wine first and then move on to the red wine. But we're here to fuel your curiosity. You can mix it up. You can turn it into whatever kind of tasting you'd like. We also really heavily encourage questions. Please interrupt us. We are more than happy to stop talking about the information that we have on our sheets and really tell you what you're looking for. So please, like I said, don't feel bad about interrupting us. You can just throw your hands up. You can take yourself off mute. It's very casual. We're just here to have fun.
And you can chat. You can also put messages in the chat.
Absolutely. That's also welcome. We will definitely be monitoring the chat as well. So let's see what else. By show of hands, I'm curious who's been to Croatia. A couple people. Nice. Welcome back. I have never been to Croatia, nor can I speak the language, nor can Allison or Mike. So I'm sure we will be mispronouncing things all over the place. You are welcome to laugh at us. We encourage that. That's part of engagement. Although Allison has been to Croatia, so she probably has a leg up on myself and Mike. Just a quick overview of how the structure of this goes. We're going to be starting out here with the whole country. Allison's going to be talking about Croatia in general, and then we're going to zoom in and I'm going to talk about the winery. And then Mike is going to talk about the wine itself, some tasting notes, some food pairings and stuff like that. So anytime you have questions along the way, just let us know. And I think that's all for me. Well, the intro anyways. We're doing something a little different. We're going to go in on a little bit more information on the actual country this time. And that's because this is the old world. It's not as easily traveled to or often is traveled to as France or Italy or some of the other countries we've gone into. So we wanted to give you just a little bit more information and a little bit more background so you really feel like you're in the country that you are drinking the wine of. So for my history or for my film and literature buffs, you may have seen Croatia featured in the HBO series Game of Thrones. If you haven't heard of Game of Thrones, you need to crawl out from that rock that you've been living under. It's a fantastic show. I highly recommend it. And it does a really good job of really showcasing how gorgeous the country is. Dubrovnik specifically is where the city of King's Landing was located. I'm not going to go into it. That is also a very confusing show, but well worth a watch. Also, Mamma Mia 2, even though it says that it took place in Greek, it did not. It was in Croatia. And if you're a Shakespeare fan, Shakespeare's Twelfth Night was set in Dalmatia, which is, of course, where we're going to be drinking the wines from tonight, the Dalmatian Coast. And if you've ever heard of the dog breed Dalmatians, they originated in Croatia, and the coastline called the Dalmatian coastline is actually named after the dog breed, not the other way around, which I thought was pretty funny. How old is old? We keep talking about old worlds, the old world. In simple terms, it is what came before what we think of today as the old world, meaning France, Italy, and so on. This is where wine originated from. Couple tidbits. Croatia is home to one of the original Egyptian sphinxes. That happened in the year 297. It's 2020 right now. It's kind of a long time ago. Originally, there were 12 sphinxes that were brought to Split in Croatia. And currently only a black granite one remains and is standing at the Peristyle, which is a tourist destination. Also, here's a bad pronunciation, Vinkovici, which is in eastern Croatia, is one of the oldest towns in all of Europe. It's been continuously inhabited for more than 8,000 years. I'm going to get into some of my other fun facts a little bit later, but I think we should skip forward to the drinking part, which is the fun part, of course. Traditionally, the main drink of Croatia is called rakiza, and it's like a fruit brandy. It's distilled, and you can make it from plums, nuts, different types of fruits, but it's mostly made from grapes. And this is the country's drink of choice and used in almost every single social gathering. You can get it in every single restaurant. And they actually say that most of the best raika is made in the home. So Mike is going to start making that for us. We'll taste it in the next tasting.
Overalls.
Yeah, with his moonshine. And a really fun fact that I think we all probably practice in a lot of places around the world, but eye contact is very important when you do the cheers. Cheers in Croatian is živoli. So I think that it would be really fun for us to kick off this tasting, this series of the old worlds with some direct eye contact. Find a bubble to stare at and don't break that eye contact. And I think we should all živoli. All right, Allison, take it away.
So we are not going to the old world yet, because later in this series, when we go to Armenia and Hungary, that's going even further back. But not to inundate you with too much non-wine stuff, but I thought I'd give a little context of Croatia's history. I'm sure there are people on here who probably know as much or more than I do about this, but I think it gives a good context of how the wine industry has been shaped by the political and cultural history of Croatia. So Croatia, in 1945, after World War II and the Nazi invasion, it became one of 6 constituent republics of the Yugoslavia Socialist Federation. And in 1980, the slow disintegration of Yugoslavia began as each individual republic tried to assert their desire for independence. The collapse of communism in Eastern Europe in 1989 led to the first free election in more than 50 years in Croatia, which took place in 1990. The first half of the 90s brought independence and it brought war. Croatia declared its independence in 1991, and Croatian Serbs in the east of the country expelled the Croats with the aid of Yugoslavian army. And next thing you knew, by the end of the year, nearly 1/3 of Croatia was under Serb control. So the UN came in 1992, setting up protected areas, keeping Croats and Serbs apart. And Croatia then became involved in a war that we were all alive for, the Bosnia-Herzegovina War, which supporting the Bosnian Croats against the Bosnian Serbs, and then against the Muslims. 1995, Croatia Serbs flee to Bosnia and Serbia, and then finally the Dayton Peace Awards ended the war. In 1996, and I give this context because this is when we were all growing up. So this is a time, you know, when other wine regions were shining back and forth, and this is what this country was going through. In 1996, they restored diplomatic relations.
That's nice of you to say I was still growing up then.
Well, you know.
I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, so I'll take it.
But they restored diplomatic relations with Yugoslavia and joined the Council of Europe. And then the 2000s, the early 2000s, all the numerous war criminals were tried. And Croatia was focused on war crime after war crime after war crime. They were in talks to join the EU, but in April 2009, they joined NATO, but EU membership talks were canceled because of their issues with Slovenia, which is the next region we will be at in 2 weeks. In March of 2013, the European Union finally gave Croatia the green light to join the EU, and they became the 28th member state of the European Union. So while the politics of Croatia played out, there was a cultural and tourist side as well. Tourism dates back to the middle of the 19th century, but during communism and the war years, tourism really decreased. It was really more by locals, and it was by nearby countries. So surrounding countries they were not at war with, and then also a lot of Scandinavians, but it was really not on the radar of Western Europe, of obviously North America and other places. But then Game of Thrones came along. Game of Thrones, since it was launched by HBO in 2011, Dubrovnik has seen its popularity as a tourist destination rise. And today, Croatia is one of the most visited tourist destinations on the Mediterranean. Croatian has been named one of the top 3 destinations in the world as prestigious. It got the Best Country Award 2020, named by British newspapers, and it continues to get awards as the place to go. And I went 2 years ago on a cruise up the coast with my mom, and I can understand why. It is absolutely magnificently gorgeous. It has that old world feel without the modernization that we've seen in a lot of other countries in Europe have. As gorgeous as Italy and France and Spain are, there's been a lot of urbanization that Croatia has not seen to that degree. So as Croatia cements its position as one of Europe's most popular vacation destinations, there's been a growing interest in food and wine. In 2018 alone, Croatia welcomed more than 20 million tourists. And the new interest in Croatian wine is also fueled because of the growing interest, or the growing number of Americans who are going there. So I guess we can pat ourselves on the back that we Americans are why Croatian wine has started to see itself kind of around our country and other places. And the 2 most popular places to go are Istria and the Dalmatian Coast, where the wine is predominantly centered, and that's where people like to go. So when it comes to wine in Croatia has a very, 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 very long history. The Greek settlers first introduced vineyards to the Croatian coast on the South Dalmatian islands of Vis, Hvar, and Korčula in the 5th century, which was about 2,500 years ago. And if you look on that map, yeah, you see I don't know if you can see Korčula, Hvar, and then Korčula, and I can't see Vis, but yeah.
This is one of is right here. It's this tiny one.
Yeah, there you go. So that's where it had started 2,500 years ago, and it has flourished ever since. In the 15th century, the Ottoman Turks arrived and they imposed strict anti-alcohol laws as part of the Islamic law. But the Ottoman Empire, while they were anti-wine, they were tolerant of Christianity. So the Catholic Church was allowed to continue their traditions, and that pretty much saved the local wine production from becoming extinct, because priests and monks were allowed to continue making wine for church services. The fact is that the church, in some odd way, has saved a lot of areas from extinction, including the United States, because it was the churches that had production even during Prohibition. So I guess we can thank the churches for something.
Oh, thank God.
In the 18th century, much of the present day Croatia came under the control of the Habsburg Empire, and wine production absolutely flourished in the 19th and 20th centuries. It especially flourished in the late 1800s when phylloxera hit Europe, because while the production was decreasing in France and Germany, Croatian vineyards were unaffected and they were exporting their wines. It actually increased their exports because they were fulfilling a demand that Europe was lacking, or the demand that Europe had for a void that they had. But unfortunately, phylloxera did eventually hit Croatia by the turn of the 20th century. And at that time, a lot of the wine growing families left Croatia and came to the New World. They came to the United States to plant vineyards. Now, Mike Gergich is a very famous Napa producer. He did not come at that point at the turn of the 20th century. He came about 50 years ago, but he is an example of the Croatians that have set up in California. We then had the communist system of Yugoslavia. And at that point, like you're going to hear when we go to Armenia and Hungary, the quality of wine decreased exponentially because all they focused on was quality. The quality of wine decreased because all they focused on was quantity. They just wanted to push out wine, and they didn't care about production methods. They didn't care about the grapes. They just wanted mass produced wine. So unfortunately, it became a lot of cooperatives. It became a lot of bulk wine, and not even necessarily drinkable wine. Drinkable to the Russians. They still drink that stuff. But fortunately, with the War of Independence in the 1990s, vineyards and wineries started, well, first they were destroyed. However, some of them were saved, and a whole new generation of winemakers have turned their talents and their attention to increasing the quality of wine production using modern technology, but really preserving the best of their old traditions. So they're really focused on looking at the unique terroirs, the microclimates, the grapes, the indigenous, and making wines that they enjoy at home and abroad. And it's really only in the last 2 decades, after most of the vineyards have been revived, that Croatia started producing enough wine for exports. And now we're starting to see them compete on the world market. We have to remember that the majority of Croatians, I mean, they were drinking something like 65% of what they produced. That wasn't leaving a lot for us. and it definitely made it into parts of Europe, but it sure didn't make it across the ocean to America until more recently. So following the devastation of phylloxera, there are only 130 indigenous varieties that remain in Croatia, and most are planted in really small-sized parcels in family vineyards. Approximately 40 of these native varieties are used in commercial production, and then they have a dozen international varieties. They have about 20,000 hectares of vineyards planted throughout Croatia. And when we say international, I mean, you name the grape: Cabernet, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Merlot, all of those. But today, Croatia produces up to 700 wines, and some are of excellent quality. There are 300 official wine regions, and it's divided into coastal and interior wines. 60% of the wine in Croatia is white wine, and 32% is red wine, and rosés are very rare, and then they're very strict about their labeling. Origin is very important to them. So this context of the history of Croatia is really interesting because Croatia is just across the Adriatic Sea from Italy. And while they don't share a land border, they share a maritime border. And that means that Croatia really does have the perfect climate for wine and olive oil. And, you know, it's sort of sad that history has played such a role in the destruction of a wine region instead of building it up. But fortunately, they are reassessing everything that they offer. So per the map that Gina had shown earlier, which was minimal because Croatia actually has more than 1,200 islands, islets, and crags off the coast of the mainland, but only 48 of those are inhabited. And while there are over 300 geographically defined wine producing regions in Croatia, you can really divide it into three areas, three main areas. And I'm trying to see if you can, does that map go any further into Croatia, Gina, or does it just show the Dalmatian coast?
I see, do you see the pink Dalmatian coast,
Yeah.
the orange Istria,
Okay.
There's the Croatian uplands, which is this turquoise color, and then Slavonia and
Sorry.
Danube is the green.
Sorry, I had it cut off on my computer, so I couldn't see it. There it is. Okay. So yeah, so as you can see, there are three main growing areas. The first one is the Dalmatian and Croatian islands, the pink area. And this gets a Mediterranean climate with sunny, warm, and dry summers. It makes it perfect for vacations as well as vine growing. They tend to produce full-bodied and ripe wines, and they use a lot of old and native varieties. And the world's largest continually cultivated vineyard, it's a UNESCO heritage site, is actually on the island of Hvar. Grapes have been grown since 400 BC there. So that goes way, 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 way back. Old. There are about 100 grape varieties in the Dalmatian coast area. And what also makes Dalmatia special are the diverse wine growing locations and unique relief forms, because you have vineyards in the narrow coastal belt there. And then you also have along the seashore, then you have high steep slopes or terraces that are cut into the rock. You then move further north into that orange area and you have Istria. And Istria is the northwestern peninsula of Croatia. This used to belong to Austria, Italy, and Yugoslavia at various times in history over the, actually over the last century. So not even going too far back. And this mix of influence is evident in the cuisine, it's evident in the language and the wine. They also have a Mediterranean climate, and Istria shares some of the climatic characteristics with Dalmatia and also with neighboring Italy. In fact, they say that the truffle production rivals that of Alba in Piedmont. So probably at half the price, but.
The exception of they didn't know about it. They will shave that on your like food like nobody's business, and you're like, I love Croatia.
Yeah, and they didn't charge you like $400 additional on your pasta. So Istria, compared to the coast, you know, it's very hilly. It's got an extensive coastline, so you've got a lot of different microclimates and aspects. They have about 4,000 hectares of vines. It's best known for Malvasia istarska, which we call Malvasia istriana in Italy. And the vineyards, you've got iron-rich Terra Rossa soils that are great for rich red wines, such as Merlot and Cabernet, as well as Refošk and Teran, which are two indigenous red grapes. And then our final region is the Continental Croatia, in there, not near the water at all. And while Croatia is mostly thought of for its coastline, the larger landmass is actually on the continental eastern limb. It's where the capital Zagreb is located. And it juts out between Slovenia and Hungary to the north, Bosnia to the south. And surrounding the capital of Zagreb, you have the Croatian uplands with cool continental climates. So they make sparkling wines there. And further inland to the east, you're going to get a more moderate climate. So you're going to get one of the most planted grapes, a white grape called Grashevina, which is also Welsh Riesling, and Traubenac, also known as Gewürztraminer. So those are the two grapes that are grown more in the continental area. So before I jump into grapes and getting into a few grapes to know, I figured we should jump back to the Dalmatian coast. Let Gina talk about the producer we have, drink a little Pošip. I'll jump back in and tell you about Pošip and some other things, and then, but I know you're all thirsty, so.
All right, yeah. This wine is super good. I mean, we tasted it, of course, before we sent it all to you, but I'm really very, again, happy with our choice. I also wanted to go over the actual label because I feel like every country does something a little different. And when I first got this bottle, I didn't really quite understand what was what. The language barrier also probably has a lot to do with it. So Pošip is the grape. It's spelled P-O-S-I-P, but the S with the little accent over it is a sh. So it's Pošip. It is made by the Plenković family, and they have vineyards in a couple of different locations, but Hvar is where this is specifically from, which is one of those long islands off of the coast of Dalmatia. And then, yeah, so those are kind of the things that I was just wanted to make sure everyone understood about this wine. So the Zlatan Pošip, the Plenković family, Allison's laughing at me. Zlatan Plenković is the owner and winemaker, and he comes from a super long history of family winemaking. It actually goes back about 5 generations. And the first vineyards that his family occupied are on super steep slopes that are up to about 40 to 60% incline on the southern coast of the island Hvar, which is where I showed you on that island. Like I said, the Plenković family owns about 10 hectares, which is 24.7 acres of its own vineyards on Hvar, and about 75 hectares in the Baška Voda, which is right a little bit underneath the town of Split, which is right there. So they're pretty close to one another, but they do also source grapes from multiple other vineyards as well, but those are their own family vineyards. One of my favorite fun facts is we can fit 7 Californias inside of Croatia. That one always cracks me up. I know not all of you are from California, but I am, and that does give me a little bit of perspective of how big Croatia is. And this is also one of the largest producers of wine, not the largest, but it is a larger one. So Zlatan has won the Croatian Winemaker of the Year award and continually wins either first or second place depending on the year ever since the award started. And in 1991, the Plenković family formed a horticulture company named Vitis, but later changed the name to Zlatan Otok, which is also on the label as well. And then another thing, in big bold letters, it says Vrhunsko vino. That also means premium wine. So that's just another designation of some of the wines that are being made. And Mike, what are you tasting?
Oh, well, let me tell you a little bit about Pošip.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Pošip is an indigenous white grape that's primarily grown in the Dalmatian region of Croatia on the island of Korčula. In the past, it was only grown on the island of Korčula, but thanks to its early ripening, it started to spread around Dalmatia, and now we have it from Hvar. The story of the name behind Pošip this is the story. I can't verify it 100%, but this is what I was told when I was in Croatia, is that a farmer had a grapevine growing on a pomegranate tree. And pomegranate in Croatian is called a šipak, which is S-H-I-P-A-K. So the grape was named the Pošip, the P-A-R-S-H-I-P-A-K, to mean from the pomegranate. Over time, Pošip became Pošip. So that's why they say that's the name. Can't verify it, but it's fun to tell. I have a more legitimate story about the next grape, much more legitimate. But you know, Pošip is generally a full-bodied white wine that typically, and Mike will kind of talk about this wine, it's known for apples, aromas of apples, vanilla spice, citrus fruit, and also almond notes are really typical of this grape. When I was in Croatia, this is a wine that was easily found. Obviously, as I said before, it's a lot of white wines. And we had this with so many fish dishes that's what we had. So Mike, what about this wine?
Awesome. I found that this wine, okay?
You're good.
All right. Okay, you can hear me, right? I found this wine changed a lot as it opened up. It was so cold when we were first drinking it, Allison, and it did have that almondy sort of like toasted almond note, but I feel like that's almost gone away. It really has like this really slaty minerality, like it smells like wet metal or aluminum or something at this point, which is really interesting. It doesn't taste that way though. It tastes very sort of fleshy, and I'm sort of getting that dried apricot thing that they talk about. There's reference to green fig I'm seeing here and there, but I'm just not familiar with what green fig is. I've only thought of fig when it comes to red wine. And so they kind of lost me on the green fig part. I guess maybe green olive is what I think of, but I'm not getting too much of that on the palate. On the nose though, it just smells straight up like cold, wet metal or something weird, like rain on metal if you
So
like went outside after a storm.
What is the protocol in this wine?
The protocol? Oh, what are they? Oh, it's stainless steel, sorry. Stainless steel, same for both wines actually, unoaked stainless steel. And for me, this wine is so balanced and so easy to drink, but it's not a simple wine either. It's complex, and I really love the body on it, on the mouth. It just really brings sort of an unctuous quality to it. It's viscous without being overbearing in any way. I'm wondering what everybody else is getting or thinking. I'm definitely getting some lemon rind and lemon pith. There's sort of a bitter lemon play on the nose as well. Anyone want to chime in?
I think it tastes like sunshine, and like it almost reminded, well, because I feel like I get like a salty when you were talking about like minerality,
like seashells.
We were just like thinking it tasted like, because it makes sense, it's the coast, like I'm getting like a beachy feel to it. It reminded me almost of Suave from Italy, which has like a similar color.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, it has that seashell minerality, which is Chablis, and it does have a Suave like element to it. To me, it kind of reminded me of Fiano, which would also be sort of a similar thing going on, where it has kind of minerality, but at the same time, it has that mouthfeel that's more full-bodied without being over the top.
Yeah,
really good notes.
Pošip as a grape can be kind of like a high acid, not high, but high acid fruity Sauvignon Blanc. It can also go into kind of that Chenin Blanc style. So there's a range. Pošip, not all Pošip are exactly the same, and that's what's kind of cool. I think this one has so much texture. It really is a wine that I'm enjoying it now, but I just keep thinking of having like a piece of like whitefish grilled with just some lemon, and how good this would be, or even putting like a butter sauce and it would work, or I'm just gonna get hungry way too early.
Gina, how did you find this one, and how did you make this as your choice?
So we work with a number of distributors. This specific distributor is, oh my God, I'm
Importer.
the name. What?
Importer.
Yes, importer. But Allison, what's their name?
Venom.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
I've worked with, I've attended a lot of trade events, and I've worked with a lot of these different importers and written about them. And I had met the owner of this company at a tasting and was just impressed across the board with his wines. And so reached out to him, and then,
So the suppliers for the Croatian wines are also the same suppliers or importers for Slovenia. So those all came to my house together, and then we worked with 3 separate other importers for the 3 other countries. And sometimes it's easier to work with one importer that works with multiple countries. Sometimes it's really nice to be able to work with very small, independent, highly focused importers who work on only one specific country, which is what we did for
this importer only does Croatian and Slovenian wine, and our Georgian wine comes from a Georgian wine importer.
Yeah, so it's hard to find, but once you get connected with them, then it's worth it. And Allison has been absolutely instrumental in making that happen. I used to focus just on California wine, so she's really like blown my world right open, because she has participated in and executed a number of trade events from all over the world.
One of the cool things that when we were looking for the wines, you know, I went to people I knew who imported specifically Croatian, Slovenian, Hungarian, you know, different wines. We were working, in all honesty, at a certain price point so that we can make it affordable for you guys, but also looking to do indigenous varieties. So we asked them, hey, what do you have in your portfolio that works within this price point? Because obviously we can't be doing $60 and $80 wines. Also, like, what is it? And in a couple cases, they sent us options, and I was like, Gina and I were talking, we're like, no, we're not doing a Sauvignon Blanc. No, we're doing indigenous grapes. Like, that's the only question. You know, that's all there is to it. So this is not to say that you won't get an amazing Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay or Riesling from these countries, but that's not what we're here to explore here. We're to introduce you to things you've never heard of, except Sabrina, because I know she loves Pošip. So before we move on to our red, I want to tell you about two other white grapes. One of them that you might occasionally see, and then one that you probably won't. One of them is Grashevina. As I mentioned, it's Welsh Riesling. Now, I don't know how much Grashevina you're going to see here in the United States, but it is 22% of Croatia's production. That is a huge amount. It's grown all over Croatia, and it's considered best from continental Croatia, where you can get kind of a fresh grassy style to riper styles with floral and fruity aromas, higher body. So, you know, kind of think like Sauvignon Blanc in that sense. Another grape that's really important to know, because this is the three most planted grapes in Croatia are the Grashevina, the Malvasia Itarska, and then the red wine that we're going to have, the Plavac Mali. And so Malvasia is an interesting one because it's a big family. There are a lot of Malvasia grapes out there. Italy has a lot of Malvasias. They are not necessarily related to each other. Just because they say Malvasia does not mean that they are genetically connected. So this particular one originates from Istria, and it's Croatia's second most planted grape variety, and it's 8% of national production. It tends to have floral orchard fruit notes. It's very fresh and youthful if it's in stainless or concrete, but it can handle oak, and it can be a much more rich, full-bodied, you know, white wine. And they even make a lot of orange wines with this grape. And it also will be very different depending on where it comes from, the soils that it's grown in. So you will likely see Malvasia Istarska on lists that carry Croatian wines. The Grashevina, I'm not going to hold my breath. There's a lot of it, but I don't know how much is here. But then there's Pošip. And while Pošip is not one of the primary three grapes, it is, as we talked about, really popular. Another grape that I had when I was in Croatia, white wine, was Grk. Grk is a grape that, GRK, it has no vowels in it. We don't know if it has Greek origin, GRK, Greek, but you know.
I was going to say, that's my wife's nickname for me, Jerk. I heard my name called, I unmuted and.
But I mean, there are some very cool varieties you can find when you're traveling through Croatia, and you eat a lot of fish along the coast and you get a lot of great white wines. But this Pošip is amazing. We're going to continue staying in Dalmatian Coast and move on to Plavac Mali.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the Malvasia, isn't that a majority of what they make their white wine rakia from?
I think so, because it's a really aromatic grape, and I believe so, but I don't know if that there's any rule to it. Gina, did you see anything about a rule to it?
I didn't. What I was observing was that it was just made from a variety of different fruits, mostly grapes, but I didn't see a specific grape called out. But like Allison said, that would make a lot of sense because the rakia is highly aromatic, and that would make sense from the Malvasia.
So Plavac Mali, this is the darling of Dalmatia. This is the third most planted grape variety in Croatia, and it grows mostly along the Dalmatian coast. It translates to small blue, and it's a wine that tends to be rich and full of flavor. It tends to be, this example is not one of those, but it tends to be high in alcohol and high in tannins with lower acidity. Typical flavors are blackberry, dark cherry, pepper, carob, dry figs, and spice. And if I say that, does that remind you of another wine? Zinfandel? So Plavac Mali is actually the son of Zinfandel. And it has a similar taste profile, but it's also known for really uneven ripening. So you need a lot of sunshine, which is why the coast is so important. But Gina just shared, I had written an article about the history of the Zinfandel grape. What's interesting, Carol Meredith is a grape geneticist up in Northern California. She also makes wine. And what happened was there was a misunderstanding that Plavac Mali and Zinfandel and Primitivo were all the same grape. And for years, everyone said that they were the same grape. Carol Meredith was sent an old leaf, was figuring things out, and had figured out that Zinfandel and Plavac Mali were related, but they were not the same grape. And I wrote about it in the long story of how it worked. She worked with Gurgit. She was trying to figure it out. And then they found an old dried up leaf that belonged to Tribidag, which is how they were able to relate it to Zinfandel. So Croatia's Tribidag, which also has another name, Croatian name, called Šrlenik Kastelanski, or something like that. They're missing a lot of vowels in this. But, it happens to be, Tribidag is equal to Zinfandel. And Zinfandel and Primitivo are the same, but Tribidag also happens to be a parent to Plavac Mali. So there you go. So Gina, tell us about the producer we got here. We've got someone very hip and cool, it looks like.
She is very hip and cool, and right in line with it being Women's History Month, this is a female winemaker. More and more of those are popping up, although that's not entirely unusual in Europe. That's just more of a new thing here in the New World. So Plavac Mali is the grape. The winemaker's name is, where'd she go? Anyways, I'll get to that. So, Mare Bura, and that's why it's Plavac Bura. So it's her wine. The Bura family has been growing grapes and making wine on, again, super steep slopes at about a 45-degree angle facing the southern sun on Pošip, on the peninsula, which is parallel to Croatia's Dalmatian coast. I'll bring up that map when I'm done talking and I'll point it out. And also another ancient winemaking family. And they used to, like Allison was saying, just push out quantity. It used to be mainly quantity, a lot of it going to the co-ops. But since the fall of the communist era, they've actually been able to shift from quantity to quality. And now they're farming completely organically, and they care a lot about the actual land as opposed to how much wine they're pushing out. I thought it was really interesting that during the communist era, over 60% of their wine went to, over their harvest had to be turned over to the government co-ops. So that was basically just juice for the masses, and it wasn't like beautiful wine like it is today. Now, Mare Bura has taken over as the winemaker, and from her uncle, who is named Nico, and he was also completely famous as well. And they are true garagistes. They have turned their winemaking setup into the ground floor of their house. So they live in the winery, or technically above the winery. And like I said, just really, really, really care. Have you guys been there, Kim and Eddie? I see you excited. You've been there? No.
No, we were talking about something else.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like, we've been there. And I was like, that's cool.
Which we were trying to plan a vacation on the side here based on all
We
this.
started searching for vacations in Croatia, so you guys have us hooked.
I think we
Anybody
should
want to
all
join?
go.
Yeah, anybody want to join? All right.
Let's all get vaccinated first, and then we'll.
So I know Jean is going to get her passport, but someone just got to make sure Aaron's isn't expired.
That's right.
Then you should figure out like another business you can come out of this is like the wine trips, like organize the winemaker trips and travel vacations. And I mean, here's another
We have
good
this,
opportunity.
Yes.
we have this,
yes.
100%.
Wine
this
trip.
nice little loyal following of you guys. So I think
Yes.
we do that when travel starts again.
We were joking that
so
we'll
cute.
drop off my kids in Michigan with grandma. And Eddie's like, yeah, we just won't tell them how many kids. And we'll like bring in Ryan and Melanie's kid too. And they'll be like, wait, what happened?
I'm not kidding, where I actually have a woman who's been hounding me to schedule a wine trip in like Croatia and a couple of different places. So, I mean, I think it's a little too soon to actually put something on the calendar, but if you guys are really genuinely interested, I will make that happen. And please bug me about it, because I would very much like to go there as well. And yeah, so that's a serious offer if anyone is.
And I know a few people, so I can help.
Can I interject though and say that we should also do like a vaccinated San Ynez reunion, like more soon than Croatia, because that's easier.
So
to
I will apologize to Bern because she's on the East Coast. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
I am, yes or no, but Scott here with me, he's a Californian,
I'm a Californian.
born and bred.
Okay. Well, I mean, you can plan the trip out here, and everyone else is Southern California except Sabrina, but you know, you can just hop on down from Sonoma. So we can definitely do a San Ynez trip.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be really fun. I just got my first shot yesterday, and we'll be fully vaccinated in about a month. So yay.
I get my second next week.
Yes. Yeah. Really happy they opened it up to us wine industry folks. I feel really blessed for that. Yeah, so that's this. Oh, one more thing. The cool thing about this wine, and why I mentioned it would be cool to put it in the fridge for about 15-20 minutes before you started drinking it, is because it has a little bit of carbonic fermentation in it, which is a different type of fermentation than your classic yeast fermentation. A very brief overview. I know that some of you have heard me say this before, but when you carbonically ferment or carbonically macerate, same meaning, that's where you put the entire whole clusters of grapes into a completely airtight sealed container, and you pump in CO2, and the pressure starts to build as the individual grape berries themselves start to ferment, and the grapes literally explode. And what you collect is the juice at the bottom of the barrel, or it's not in a barrel, it's in like a plastic bin, is that kind of what people call like first press or first collection of juice, and it's super fresh tasting. And so that's super fresh, really light, with a touch of skin contact, that creates this like really light, I'm not going to say bubblegummy because I don't get a ton of bubblegum on this specific wine, but that is a common note that comes from carbonically macerated wines such as Gamay, if you're making it in the Beaujolais Nouveau style. But this is different, of course, different variety, which does have a little bit more oomph to it. And it was aged for 5 months and then bottled and unfined and unfiltered. So, and with just a touch of sulfur, very, very, very small amounts. So if you are sensitive to sulfur, this might be a fantastic wine for you. And here you go, Aaron. He wants some too.
Yeah, what are you getting on it, Mike?
Yeah, it is fantastic. I think it has a sort of tart boysenberry, pomegranate coming through. There is also that same sort of salty, sort of sea air minerality quality to it, both on the nose and the palate. It's just super fresh, but I don't think it lacks complexity at all. And I believe that that sort of carbonic maceration is, yeah, I mean, if it was a flavor of bubblegum, it would be grape. It's very grapey. It's very sort of ripe and intense and present. Maybe some black cherry in there as well on the nose. It's really pretty on the nose, but just on the palate, it's very assertive and it has really lovely tannins, mouth-watering acidity. And they recommend you pair this with charcuterie, which I think is a great play because that salty meat with this would just counteract in a way that just gives you the full like spectrum of flavor in my mind, you know, including the umami. But when you reminded me of the carbonic maceration, because I had read that and thought about that, it does remind me in a way of sort of Cru Beaujolais, sort of a lower tier Cru Beaujolais in that respect, which is to me, to my palate, very exciting. Does anybody else have any thoughts about this that maybe I missed?
I think what's interesting when you say that, because carbonic maceration is like a whole berry and it happens from the inside out, whereas when you crush the fruit and you add yeast, it's fermenting the crush.
Without the skins normally, or
I mean, yeah, with the skins, but it's not happening within the berry. It is more of a fermentation with the berry, with the skins, than this is more in the inside. And what I like about this compared to even a Beaujolais, which I love Beaujolais, but to me, Beaujolais are about, it's the fruit forward element. And this has this kind of, you know, Sabrina and I was messaging me, and there is sort of a dried herbal characteristic. There's something, I wouldn't say an earthy wine, but there's something very, that's not the fruit side of it, that's so enjoyable about this wine.
Yes, the tannins are significantly drying on the back end, on the finish. It makes you want to keep diving in. It does have kind of that dried herb thing going on, almost like marjoram or thyme or these sort of flavors. And I remember I had even written down like herbal ? Because that's what I was experiencing. And then as it's warmed up, because I'm at room temp now, it really does feature that. I mean, I did enjoy this. We drank this super cold. At least mine was super cold when we talked about it before. I'm actually enjoying it at room temp quite a bit. And this will be a good NBA Friday wine when this is all done, because I'm really enjoying this wine. I wonder how does everyone else feel about this? To me, this is one of the more fun wines that we've had for a while in my mind. I'm into this one. Anyone?
I had a really interesting first sip, and it's kind of calming down, or maybe I'm just getting more used to the mouthfeel. Is it literally tastes like seawater, and that's not a bad thing. But it is, to me anyways, an unusual experience in a red wine. I get that a lot in white wines, especially, of course, wines that come from a very coastal region. But this is, of course, a very coastal region, and I'm getting a lot more ocean influence in the actual flavor of the wine, which I find extremely appealing. And as we were doing some research for this, I was looking up different food pairings, and it came up as one of their more popular dishes. And I can't remember the Croatian name, nor do you want me to say it, but it's
P-E-K-A. P-E-K-A.
No, I know what you're talking about, but it's not that. It's
and not Brudette either. Brudette was the fish stew for the white wine.
I mean, that would also pair very well. We included that recipe in the invite to tonight.
Right.
But what I'm specifically talking about is black risotto that's dyed black with squid ink.
Wow. Yeah.
And that is literally this, like in a dish. And I would love to have that along with this.
Yeah, because it's really cool that it has the tannins, but every time I take a sip, I get these drying tannins, and then suddenly I realize I'm salivating, and I've got all this like I keep salivating, which makes me want more. But it's also that kind of salinity. It's that mouth-watering acidity. It's like
there's a balance. There's a balance to it. It sounds, if you described it to somebody, they'd be like, that doesn't sound that great. But it's very balanced. It has the whole package. I'm experiencing fruit and that drying tannin at the same time. And I'm wanting to dive in for more. Like,
it's fun because it's related to Zinfandel, you know, just as a push for Zinfandel, I will say that a lot of times we have this perception of Zinfandel as a stereotype of like a big jammy, fruity wine, but that, you know, some of these cool characteristics we're finding is what's so cool about Zinfandel. There are a lot of producers that are making ones that are much more kind of earthy and have spice to them and are not about the fruit bomb. So just a side note that like, give Zinfandel a chance. If you like Plavac Molly, they're related, you know.
They're friends.
Yeah, I was gonna say like it tastes very balanced. It's really with so much complexity, but it works somehow. Like you get every single thing in there and it's very balanced. It's
balanced and
really
yet
good.
kind of fresh and fun. You can have fresh and fun with this wine and yet it's not simple. It's got, What
right, like it's here and here,
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Sabrina?
Well, I had written about Pošip before, and I was like, you know, it tastes like the vision of sitting on the Adriatic, like in white linen clothes, and you just see this big yellow flower. It's just like there's something magic. But what I also noticed about it is that you tasted almost like that Adriatic Sea kind of mineral, kind of salinity. And I love that both of these wines kind of have that in them. It's really nice.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's what I'm coming away with too, is they both are giving me a sense of place that's really unique, and I'm really enjoying that. I feel like I'm experiencing the terroir besides salivating over these photos of these beaches in Croatia, which is ridiculous. Like, we're gonna get there, and I can't imagine going to tasting rooms. I just want to be on the beach and bring the wine to me. But these are special. Yeah.
When I went to Croatia, again, it wasn't a wine trip. It was a travel trip, you know, going up the coast. And it was a great way to see Croatia the first time. Cruising is not my general thing. Like, I love being on the boat, but I don't like 3 hours in a town and then I have to hop back on a boat. And this was only like a 30-person boat, but it was still, you know, not my way of traveling. But I will say that it gave me a taste. And what's really fun is that no matter where you are, like when you're in Italy or when you're in France or any other country, more so than when you're here in the US, you get to try these wines with the local food in every restaurant you go. So I remember that so Gurk is really hard to find. It's really it's on Korčula. It's not made anywhere else. The very, very small, it was almost extinct. Very small production. There are 8 producers who make it. And I remember my mom and I went to a dinner on Korčula with the owner of the hotel, and there was a winemaker that showed up that was this old guy wandered into the dinner who was a friend of his, because, you know, that's what happens when you're on a tiny island. And he had brought his wine, and I took photos and I tasted it. It was delicious. I was like, where can I find this wine? He's like, from me. You know, like I can't find it anywhere else. And the rest of our trip, we were like on this mission to find Gurk anywhere we could find it. And I remember being, I think in not Zagreb. What was I'm blanking. The city.
Dubrovnik?
No, it was Dubrovnik was our first city. No, the city you mentioned that's with an S. It's
Split.
Split. Yeah, we were in Split, and I remember being in restaurants and being like, and then going to every place like, do you have a Gurk? And I was on a mission to eat at Michelin-starred restaurants on our free nights. So my mom was like I'm like, Mom, we're going to a 2-star Michelin restaurant tonight. We're going to a 3-star Michelin, you know? And so everywhere we went, we were able to find like Gurk in one of the restaurants. And I was like, yes, we're trying it. Cause you know, it's just so fun to like find the local things. But
the local 2-star Michelin restaurant.
You know,
Casual.
It's actually really interesting. I know that Gina didn't mention this at the beginning, but what was it, Gina? There are 15 UNESCO sites. Is it 15?
Let me pull that up. No, there's 10 that exist on the list, and there's 15 on the tentative list. So, did you go over what the UNESCO list of World Heritage sites are?
You guys know what UNESCO heritage sites are, right?
I didn't, so I'll define it really quickly because I didn't before us looking this up. So UNESCO World Heritage is a designation for places on Earth that are of outstanding universal value to humanity as such. And they are protected for future generations to appreciate and enjoy. And to have 10 solidly on that list and 15 on the tentative list is huge for such a small country.
I mean, if you think about it, like Statue of Liberty, Yellowstone Park, the Taj Mahal, these are all UNESCO sites and they're preserving it. But you're right. I mean, to have 10, Croatia really is a gem. It is a very, very special gem. And, you know, I'm never one to turn down travel anywhere because I love Italy, but I have to say that Croatia is one of those places. It is pretty extraordinary. I said at the beginning, I was telling Gina, I bought these earrings, which are the typical like wedding earrings when I was in Croatia, and this funky ring. So I had to wear my Croatia jewelry today. But it is just it's a spectacular country, and there's so many cool wines. And you know, one day when you start going to restaurants again, I think, you know, you'll start to see a little bit more Croatia represented on wine lists, more so than any of the other countries we're visiting on this trip. I think Croatia has started to make more of a mark on the US market, on wine lists and cool restaurants with food pairings. We can see perfectly that these are great food wines. We're going to show you all the wines we have are great food wines, but I don't, you know, you're not seeing a lot of Armenian wines on wine lists yet. And you're not Hungarian. Maybe you'll see a ferment, you might see on the dessert list, but really it's not as prominent. This is probably of our 5 old world wines, the most commercial at this point.
That's kind of why we started, just a second, Ryan, that's why we actually started this series with Croatia more so than any of the other countries that we're going to be going through, is because we wanted, if you had been introduced to Croatian wine, we figured that was kind of an easy slide in, and then we'd throw all the weird stuff at you. What were you going to say, Ryan?
Oh, I'm butting out Melanie here, but like, oh, I'm going to. No, you said it's super fresh. I was thinking so fresh, which is like a good dad joke for us in the SoCal region. So like drinking this, I actually got like, I don't know why I was like, oh my God, this tastes like a fresh like Sangiovese. I don't know like why it would, but we're trying it with like pepperoni pizza later tonight, so we'll try that.
Well, Ryan, does it remind you of the Stolpen So Fresh Carbonic Sangiovese? Because
oh, that could be why.
Wait, I don't think I've had. Oh wait,
we have.
Oh, that's, yes. Oh, I forgot that was Sangiovese. Yeah. So I was gonna say, for anyone who likes this, Stoltman's So Fresh line is the most delicious, amazing, affordable carbonic line in California that Gina introduced us to. But I'm curious, do they do a lot of carbonic in Croatia, or is this unusual?
That's a great question, Allison.
I don't think it's the norm. It's not like one region does it or more, but you're talking about, you know, with all these small producers and sort of the rebirth and regrowth of Croatian wine, and as we'll find in other countries, as I said at the beginning, Croatia, you have all these small producers who are both doing a combination of honoring traditions while also using more modern technologies or modern awareness. I shouldn't say technologies, because we're about to go over the next month or so into very old ways of making wine with quiveras and concrete and other things. And I think that what you have with these producers is they're really honoring tradition. And in a case, I would say with a case of this wine, you have what we in America would call a young, hip winemaker, but really using minimalist intervention and using old techniques to make a great wine. So it's this interesting kind of like hip, cool thing, but it's also what works best. I mean, if you look at the importer has a bunch of wines. This producer makes, 5, 6, 7 different wines. They have a Plavac Molly that is not carbonic. So I think that this is just a great example of a wine that's fun for, well, I can't say it's fun for summer. It's a really good food wine. It's like you were saying, Stacey, it's got complexity, but it's also really fun and fresh.
Yeah, I think when you hear carbonic and then you have the screw top and then you have sort of the like fun sort of party like stuff going on like with this, you know, like right here, you think, oh yeah, cool. This will be like a nice wine to just throw in the fridge and we're drinking it and we're like kind of like, wow, this is like the best wine I had all week. And I mean it is. It's very good. Very good wine.
I don't know which one I'm going to drink the rest of the night. They're both open. What do I do?
I know. That's why I poured in that Pošip.
Oh.
First world problems, I know.
You need a silly straw in each one, and then you can just drink them both at the same time. That's classy, right?
Do you think it was interesting of how, I mean, the wine, they used a cork and then this, they used a screw top? Like, have you noticed, Allison, like the differences of what these importers or what kind of like they're using in the, you know, in the old world?
You know, it's funny. I was on Crush on This. We just filmed something on closures that we'll be posting. You know, there's no right or wrong. This is not actually a natural cork. You can feel it and look at it and know that I mean, it's made of cork, but it's not a natural cork. I think it looks like it's a,
It's like a synthetic.
no, it's not synthetic. It's
kind
made
of
of cork, and I'm blanking on the name. Sabrina, help me. It's you know, when it's real cork, but it's like put together.
like compressed or some kind of.
Yeah, but there's a name for it. There's natural cork, and then it's not a traditional cork. You can kind of see because it looks more.
It's recycled cork, so it's a lot of cork chopped up and glued back together. So
Yeah,
it has similar properties as a real cork, but it doesn't expand and contract in the exact same way when introduced to moisture that a real cork would be.
so you have like traditional cork. This is real cork. It's not synthetic, but it's more compressed. You can still get TCA, but less chance. And then you can have synthetic corks, which I don't know how much they use in Croatia. And I think screw cap, I'd be curious. I'd have to go back to the website of the importer, look at the photos and see how many of the bottles they have are screw cap. I wonder if they put this under screw cap because it's carbonic and it's hip and it's cool and it's got a fun label. And they did that more of the mentality. You know, it's always interesting to kind of find out why a winemaker uses the closure that they choose to use, because in terms of aging potential, corks, but wines can age under screw cap and wines can age under glass closures, and it'll be different, but you know, there isn't one. We're so used to one traditional way, but yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if these, you know, these guys like in Croatia, depending on how much more like with importing things or not, or like kind of how their style of wine making, and if it's, you know, traditional or, you know, kind of what their evolution of, you know, the whole wine process and things works.
I don't have a lot of Croatian wines here, but I have a bunch of Armenian wines here, not just the ones we're doing, and Slovenian, and they are all cork. I think a lot of the old world still does a very traditional closure because they're not new world of mentality. I think this is more of an exception than a norm. But
I think it's also points out really well that Mar, the winemaker, after like taking over the winery after so many generations, this is probably like a really great way for her to be like, I'm here, I'm new, I'm young, and I'm doing things inspired by tradition, but also inspired by like modern winemaking. And I'm interested in playing and being creative while still using these ancient grapes. So that's probably her intent with the screw cap. I'd say that I would agree with Allison, this is more of a unique situation because it's not like bound by Croatian winemaking tradition.
Yeah, and then I was kind of wondering also, like, because we all kind of turn the wine, you know, the back label to read, you know, like the little hints or cues or stories of the wine, and having it be in English, you know, I was surprised that it was in English. So I'm wondering, do they, you know, go through and put different labels for different countries? And, you know, I mean, that's a big part of the process. Then if how many, you know, you're distributing for this, and that's a whole other.
Yeah, it has to be approved by the FDA or the TTB, I should say, has to approve every label that comes here. So if you ever have a label that's not in English, it means you brought it, you didn't You didn't buy it through normal channels. You either brought it on an airplane in your luggage, or you, which happens a lot. But no, I mean, it is if you only knew the work it takes, the front and the back have to be approved. Although there is an interesting point, which kind of goes back to something we had discussed on an earlier tasting, and then I was talking to, many of you know, Larry Schaefer of Tesoro Wines, and Stacey, you were on that call, and Jerry, you were on that call with Larry. You know, they're not as particular about what goes on the back, which is why with a grape like Cinsault or certain things where we're required to have certain spellings on the front and they can do what they want on the back, that's how they take advantage of it. But I don't think it benefits a Croatian producer or anyone else to send a label that's not in English on the back. It's hard enough.
I have an interesting tidbit, and I only know this because Aaron and I bottled our own wine about 9 months ago. And what we consider the front label is actually the back label for the TTB. So they don't care what's here. It can be art, it can be weird gibberish, it can be
just no nipples.
Yeah, no nipples. That's real, which is really stupid. But this is what they consider the back label. This, what we consider the back label, is where all the important information is. So like Allison was saying, I just wanted to clarify that this is the front label to the TTB. This has all the juicy information that they're being extremely selective about. And each country has their own specific set of rules on what has to be on the front label. And that's why you see the government warning. That's why you see, you know, the region and the variety and the vintage and the alcohol. But then I believe that probably the TTB required English. They could have also included a Croatian translation, but I think because they're selling it and importing it into America, they needed us non-Croatian speaking people to be able to understand what the label says.
Because imagine, I mean, this is the challenge that Croatian, that Armenian, that all the old world wines have. I mean, look, we've argued, you could debate this with certain French wines and Spanish wines and Italian wines, where, you know, the argument, you guys are a much more wine savvy group than the average consumer, but we know that France and Italy put the region on the bottle. They don't put the grape on the bottle. And as we learn more and more about wine, you know, we know if we look at a bottle shaped like this and it's from Burgundy, we know it's Pinot Noir because that's the law. And we learn all this. But when we start putting grapes on it, it can be foreign to people. People don't always know Roussanne, or they don't know, they might know Sangiovese. Well, most people don't know that Chianti is Sangiovese, so we already have a problem there. But, you know, there are a lot of cool grapes, but all these grapes are things that we can pretend to pronounce, even if we don't have good French or Italian accents. If you found this in a wine shop, you would be kind of scared, right? You'd be like, Zlatan, Pošip with this thing over the S, and Vrunjsko vino, like what that, I mean, if you think German wines are hard because of everything they have on it, like you get into Croatian and Greek wines. I mean, we don't know the grapes, they don't spell them in English, like it's intimidating. And so it's great that like you're tasting these wines here. And now I know when I had set this out, I know Sabrina had said she loves Pošip. How many of you had had a Pošip before other than Sabrina? How many of you had heard of a Pošip? Oh, see? So, I mean, it can be intimidating going to a grocery store or a wine shop if you're not open-minded and you don't have an educated person there to help you, like the wine buyer isn't there to help you. What's going to make you go to the wine with Z's and things you've never heard of?
Yeah. Do you have a question? I'm sorry, I know your name isn't Jeanette.
Hey, this is Darren.
Yeah.
Hey, Darren.
That's okay.
Darren.
So in a world where I don't know too much about wines, but I know a lot about labels, labeling for food and beverage there are conventions and conferences for people who do nothing but everything with, in terms of labels and the different labels, the requirements set forth, everything by the Federal Trade Commission, dealing with interstate and international, border transportation. There are companies in America that are required to, like for instance, if you want to sell your steaks or chicken or whatever, you're an American company up into Canada, you have to label it for Canada. You can't label it for the US and put it into Canada. You have to have different labeling in order to cross the borders. And there are laws about everything, literally from ingredients to portion controls and laws about the kinds of labels. And it is actually one of the more complicated nuances of the food industry that literally at times will put everyone from like dietitians and quality assurance people at fisticuffs with the labeling people, because people want to put this on the label and they're like, well, actually you can't, and they have to bring in lawyers. And it's really wild to go to these events and listen to lawyers and marketers and PR people and all the quality people duke it out over what goes on a label sometimes.
Darren, that's what's really interesting. And this is a whole nother discussion, but I know I'm with like-minded people when I make my one comment here. It is an argument by those idiots making clean wine that we don't put enough on our labels for wine. And that's the argument, is that you are required to put on the government warning, you're required to put on the alcohol. I'm assuming you have to put on, imported or distributed by, or where it's available. They don't care what you write in the descriptor. You can write gibberish. You can tell a love story. You can tell an anecdote. They don't care what you actually write in this little part here. It's this part they care. And they don't ask you to put whether wineries that are certified organic or biodynamic sustainable will put it, but you're not required to put anything on the label. And that's why you have idiots coming up with clean wine as a marketing scheme, because they're trying to counterbalance what they claim is missing in wine. My argument is just buy small producers that the winemakers, and buy from trusted sources who do that, because then you know what's in the bottle, and it doesn't matter if it's on the back of the label, because Gina can tell you what's in the bottle. I can tell you what's in the bottle. Mike can tell you what's in the bottle. Like we know who made it and what they do. But
sorry to interrupt, but Allison, I will say that someone who joins these tastings a lot, who is not on here right now, Katrina, texted me a few weeks ago that she was on a blind tasting for work where her company had paid, it was through a service, and it was a conference or something. And she texted me and was like, I can tell I'm doing a blind tasting. It's a Chardonnay. And I can also tell it's mass produced because I have a headache after 3 sips. And then she was right, it was a Chablis, but it was clearly something that was mass produced. And so I do think and we had the same thing happen where we thought we had gotten a wine out of our wine fridge from someone who only supplies small batch. And it turned out to be something we had gotten from wine.com as a gift to him. And I kept saying, I'm like, I have a headache already. Like, this is not small batch. I can tell you it's not small batch. So we went back and looked, and sure enough, it was not a cheap bottle, but it was just mass produced.
Well, I mean, we have to clarify too, small batch doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's choices winemakers make. But again, I would argue that you have to look at the individual wine to see what it is, because it is possible that you're having a reaction to histamines. It's possible the alcohol, who knows what the actual reaction is compared to, they make 1 million bottles and it's a crap wine. But yeah, I mean, I think that we have a lot of trust that people tell us what they have. I don't think, Gina, would you agree that the winemakers we know who say that they are doing what they do, or they're not doing what they don't do, are not lying? There's no reason. It doesn't.
There would be reason for them to lie, but we don't want to believe that. We're just going to trust them, because certainly we want to drink stuff that's organic, biodynamic, blah, blah, blah. I mean, and I would assume that they're telling the truth, but I want to assume, so that helps. But I mean, I think you made an interesting, what you said was interesting, because you said crap wine, mass produced. I mean, the two don't necessarily, I mean, you made a good point when you said small batch doesn't necessarily mean high quality. I mean, there's small batch, there's people making 500 to 1,000 cases, pesticiding the hell out of the vineyard and not caring a dang and just doing whatever, throwing whatever they want in there. And I mean, they're just ultimately trying to create a product they think is palatable and that they think, well, people want to buy at the price point they're selling it at. So it's really complicated, I guess. But I've had, to Ryan and Melanie's point, I've had similar experiences where I drank wine and I was like, this is just, I have a headache already in advance of finishing any more of this. And it's frustrating.
But I mean, going back to what Darren was saying, like, it is true we have really strict labeling laws for food, and we do not have that for wine, which has been a debate over the last year. When Cameron Diaz and her buddy came out with Aveline clean wine, it started a whole discussion about the labeling laws here and about how wineries are not transparent, and that's what they were trying to be. Although the irony was that they were not that transparent, because at the time you didn't know who made their wine or anything about the grapes. You just knew that they claimed they were as clean as everyone else. So yeah, I mean, it's a really tough thing in wine to say. The TTB is far more concerned if you put nipples on your label than anything else.
I want to just interject really fast because we're a half an hour over the initial time. I'm not kicking anyone off. I did just want to say we're really excited for the next 4 classes. We're also really thankful that you guys all got excited, just as excited about Hungarian wines as we are. We're here for more questions. I just wanted to release anyone if you had to go. But also, I do have 12 bottles left of each of these wines that we're tasting tonight. They're not in my shop yet. It's been a very busy week. But I will, of course, send out my follow-up email, and you guys, of course, will all get discounts on the wine as well. And I think that's just like my closing remarks, but carry on. I'm very excited about the conversation. I just wanted to say, if anyone has to go, you absolutely can.
I'm really curious, Allison and Mike, because I've been watching this conversation about clean wines for the last year as well, and natural wine before that. And like, one, the natural wine phenomenon and people discussing that seems like it's just itself a little bit better. But my perception is that the clean wine narrative got laughed out of the room. And I'm wondering if you guys feel similarly, or if you're still seeing that sort of like perpetuated in wine spaces.
I think it's more perpetuated in a niche audience. I think that once the backlash of negative articles, of which I too wrote one, about these companies, but you still have these companies out there that if, God forbid, you make one Google search, your Facebook will be inundated with clean wine ads from dry farm imports and blah, blah, blah.
Is that a winery complaint or a Facebook complaint, though? I mean, I'm not sure that.
No, I mean,
sure
my
that
problem
counts.
is there are a lot of these wineries. Wink started they have a branch of wines that it's called like Good Clean Wine or something like Good Clean, I don't know. And Dry Farm Imports it's all marketing. I just want to let you guys all know it's marketing. When they say, let's debunk these terms. When they say natural, if you put a vine in the soil on a trellis, it is no longer natural. Vines want to grow on trees. If you have planted vines, that's not natural. I am all for minimal intervention. I am all for low intervention. I am not negating that at all. But natural is such a word that just makes me want to cringe because it's
right,
not.
but you understand, you're being very literal. You understand what they're saying.
But natural doesn't have clear definitions. Natural says no sulfur and it's
I know,
natural.
but you're being critical of the term. You're being critical from a writer's point of view. You're not, it's too late now. They've glommed on to natural.
No,
they're not
I
going to
disagree.
change their mind.
I'm going to inform
It's
people who buy
they
wine in a
chose
store
natural.
that not to be taken by the term natural.
Well, all right. So for me, let me speak my piece. I'm a big consumer of the concept of natural wine. I have found many of these natural wines all taste the same. They're all 20 bucks, and you find them and they're like have these silly, ridiculous labels. And then you pour them and they all taste pretty good, but they all taste kind of really boring after you've had 3 or 4 of them. Because they just,
good.
That's because they're natural.
What percentage are faulty?
well, not that many. I mean, I have experienced some that were just straight up awful. Yeah, I have had some that were awful. But for the most part, they just taste they almost taste like they took them, ironically, they taste mass produced because they taste very similar.
Well, just to give you basic, there is no clear definition of what natural wine is, but natural winemakers, the movement of it is a minimal to low intervention approach, meaning they're not, they're using very little. The grapes come in, they ferment, and they bottle.
I agree. And low intervention is the way I like to describe it now as well. And I appreciate you turning me on to the reality of that. That's a very good way to describe it. However, low intervention just doesn't quite have the ring to it that natural wine does.
But I'm explaining to Bernadette because she was asking, she doesn't know what natural is.
Okay.
I think that natural tends to be anti-sulfur. But first of all, sulfites are natural in wine to begin with. And yes,
right,
sulfites preserve wine. And I mean, Gina, you've now made some wine and we've all drunk wine. Yes, there are wines that use too much sulfur. I'm not talking about mass-produced wines that.
But I think I agree they tend to be fairly anti-sulfite, but that would probably be an oversimplification because
I will
they're
do
also
everyone a solid, and I will send the definitions of clean wine,
Love it.
natural wine, low intervention and minimal intervention. I have worked for a biodynamic and minimal intervention winemaker before. I am cracking up because Aaron knows what he just did. He stoked the fire intentionally. He wanted to see you guys argue. I will, for the sake of the group's of lovingness of each other, I will send out the exact definitions of all of these terms in my follow-up email, and then we can actually argue it when we are all educated.
But Gina, in fairness, biodynamic and sustainable are legitimate definitions.
Yes.
Organic.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
So we know like food
Agreed.
more. So there has
organic is a defined word, although in wine it is a little more iffy because organic was used so much by putting it on lettuce at Walmart that organic is a little too generic.
But there's within winemaking, there are specific organic regulations that come with the different certifications. Of course, multiple certifications have their own little wiggle room. So I will include the popular certifications. I will clarify this for everyone, I promise.
So I'm just gonna say real quick, like I grow food and I don't grow wine, but I grow food. There's zero definition for natural. It's very well known. Meat people use it.
Natural.
Meat people use it. Everybody uses it. You could grow like seaweed in Japan, right by where the bombs blew up, and there's nuclear waste. They could call it natural. There's zero definitions of what natural is. So I want
but ironically, there are like court decisions around like 100% real or 100% beef or is it American or not?
Right. But I think one thing I would say, just to clarify, when you find the use of natural wine on something, you don't read it. If I read it on a bottle, I would be suspicious right off the bat. But if I read on Yelp, check out this natural wine bar in LA, then I would be more inclined to go check that bar out than I would be another wine bar that says, yeah, we serve wine. Because I'm interested in the type of wines that are, as Allison was saying, are low intervention and they're nerdy, they're geeky, strange, small batch, I think was the word we used earlier. So I think yes, natural wine is clearly a marketing tool. And I think if you look at like the raw wine fair, which is something that I've been to, I think Allison has been to it. I go to it every year. Gina's been to it. It's an incredible, and it's open to consumers too. It's not just a press thing. Incredible experience, because you're tasting a lot of these natural wines, and some of them are god awful. Most of them are terrific.
My issue is that I agree with you that there are no definitions, and I would say to someone like Bernadette who doesn't know what it is, I'd hate to put you on a path of using the word natural wine. I'd want to take you off of it and have you ask people.
I would never say that.
No, Boa, you clearly you've been educated by because
no, but I think she might be more afraid of it than she needs to be based on.
Let me say something real quick. If you go back,
This is great. I love this.
If you go back to the old growers in Burgundy, for example, there's no reason to use any of those labels. This is a modern American phenomena. Like, they would grow their wines the way they did for centuries. If we're going to talk about the old world, you don't put a label on it. That's let me just finish.
Yeah.
What we should do is put a label on it for what they're doing differently from the way they grew the wines from sometime BC. Like, we need to not even go into their stupid labels, because all of them natural, what's natural? Everything's natural, right? It's stupid. Like, we need to go back to how they grow wine and talk about that. That's what's interesting.
Well, I want to say that you're completely right on that, on one thing. And Mike, let me finish what I was trying to say before about that, because marketing terms only. These are, I'm not talking about how
you're right about that. You're definitely right.
I'm not talking about how I want my wine made or what I'm looking for in a winemaker, but let's talk marketing terms. Marketing terms are clean, natural, low to no sugar, no carbs, things like that. When they say that, every wine you drink that is not a dessert wine, that is a well-made wine, has no perceptible residual sugar. If it is a cheap $5 red blend, yes, there's probably residual sugar in it because they want it to be fruity and fun for you to like. But most wine has a non-perceptible amount of residual sugar. It is technically dry. It is impossible to be 0.0000000% dry. Impossible. I've talked to chemists and I've talked to other people, and that's what they've told me. I could be wrong, but that's what I've been told. So there's no such thing when they say no sugar added. This has no sugar added. This has no sugar added, and none of these have sugar added.
Right.
Except this wine, because that is a ferment that is late harvest and delicious.
See, and what I'm saying
it's fine
is
to add sugar for certain things.
No, exactly, in acidity. And then the thing about no carbs, because they're all on their keto friendly, natural BS thing. All wine is keto friendly if it's a dry wine. Guess what?
I love this.
So, Allison, this conversation is hilarious because I was just at Whole Foods this week, and they now have a whole section. Whole Foods has the best. We live in Santa Clarita, which is a wine desert, and so it is, Eddie.
Eddie, our best wine shop is Whole Foods.
There are no good wine stores in Santa Clarita.
I know, we just go straight to Agua Dulce Winery, and after 3 glasses.
But so at Whole Foods, there's a whole section now. It's brand new in the last month, and it says like natural wines. And I will say they do have they have a bunch of the field recordings.
That's my place.
Yeah.
It's delicious. I love field recordings.
Mike is sucked in by the marketing.
Gonna walk in like this.
But so field recordings is in there, but then everything else is like Cameron Diaz wine or like crap, like mass produced.
When I look at this wine,
that is natural wine.
I look at the label. I look at knowing what we know about the winemaker, what they've chosen. To me, this is what would be defined as a natural wine, but what I would call a low intervention wine. Super cool, love it. I'm in love, I'm happy, and whatever. I just have such a a bone to pick with this term natural and clean because it's so misused. Nobody understands what it is. And when the clean wines came out, I mean, you know, I am all for transparency. I am all for winemakers having to put things like we don't water down and we don't add acid because we're allowed to add sugar in America. We can't add acid, right? Chaptalization is, I always get confused what we're legally allowed. But
I think it's pre-fermentation.
Capitalization's adding sugar, yeah.
Yeah, we're allowed to add sugar. We're not allowed to add acid. That by law, that's a US wine or California wine thing. But let me tell you something. There are so many things you can add to wine, and they're not unnatural things to add to wine. I'm not talking about mega purple for deep, dark colors and whatever, but there are a lot of things people can add that are additives, but they're not unnatural. And then if we get into natural wine, also likes to promote natural yeasts. And again, there's nothing wrong with natural yeast, but you have to look at the region. Natural yeasts are coming from the ambient area. They're what's been born in your area, and you put the grapes, it's a longer process. It happens and fermentation happens. But if you're in certain areas, you can have a stopped fermentation where it just can't finish fermenting from sugars to alcohol because it's too cold or whatever reason, in which case they use a commercial yeast. But let's talk about what a commercial yeast is. A commercial yeast is not a GMO product. It is a yeast that has been created in another winery. It is natural. It is just not natural to the environment of the winery it is in, but it is not an unnatural product. It is a natural yeast. It just isn't ambient. That's one thing. And then you think about, like, those are kind of the terms where people are like, oh, I only want natural yeast. Well, going back to what you had said, I'm sorry, Bernadette, what is your name?
Yeah, I'm Bernadette.
No, your partner.
Oh, Scott. This is Scott.
Scott, you were saying, I mean, the thing is, like, with the labeling and what is natural and not natural in the yeast, like, I mean, you know, like, it's just absolutely impossible to make this gross generalization of natural yeast. You said Burgundy. Let's talk about Burgundy really quickly. Most wineries in Burgundy are not organic. They use pesticides there.
Yes.
I break it to people, but Domaine de la Romania Conti is not an organic winery. I'm not saying they use pesticides, but they are not organic. They're not practicing organics, nor are they certified. Why? Burgundy gets frost. Champagne gets frost. 1% of vineyards in Champagne are organic. 1%. It is so challenging in these areas to become certified or even practice something, because if you have to deal with frost and mold, now there are more natural organic matters you can use to combat frost and mold than maybe a pesticide or herbicide or other man-made thing. But we can't apply like our expectation. Like, I went to Santa Barbara and they're all doing, you know, low intervention, but you're thinking about California that has like 340 days of sunshine. Like, frost is not our issue in Santa Barbara. Frost is an issue in, like, you know, San Lucia Highlands. It's an issue.
Or where we're from. Try growing food.
We have fans going right now.
No, Allison, I feel like I need to pay off my very leading question. I'm so happy that went the way that it did. I can't tell you how happy I am about it. The reason I posed it is because, like, I don't mind so much the use of the term natural wine, although I don't myself use it. Like, I also prefer minimal intervention because I think it's just more descriptive of what's important to me in the conversation. My bone to pick with the idea of clean wines is that it always felt to me like it was a marketing ploy that was trying to glom on to something that sounded like it's about high quality and sustainable practices. And to your point, you know, and to the point of this conversation, like, it's not necessarily, and that particularly rubbed me the wrong way, because, like, part of the way that Gina and I have operated our business is like getting close to winemakers so we can know, what types of practices they're adopting, and then making decisions about who we want to work with based on this deep understanding. So like a label that's as inadequate as that one actually is, there's just something like spiritually and philosophically about it that makes me like rage a little bit.
Yep. Well, clearly I rage too, because and Mike and I have had this debate many times, but I'm sharing a link. This was a story I wrote for the Napa Register, but I repost everything in my blog. But I wrote an article earlier at the end of last year called "Is Clean Wine the New Hydroxychloroquine?" So,
nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Best title ever.
As long as you're not too opinionated about it, Jesus.
Allison's not opinionated. What are you talking about?
She's fair and unbiased.
Allison, I wrote an article about hydroxychloroquine for CNN.
Yes,
my inbox was fun.
Well, I mean, I actually was surprised. I got a few compliments on it. I did not get any hate mail from this article at all. I got more hate mail from when I wrote an article about 5 reasons not to use champagne flutes anymore. Didn't tell people not to use them. I said 5 reasons not to use them. And I got a lot of like grief for that one. This one.
Oh, you were doing them a huge favor. Oh my God. Are you serious? They didn't like that?
This is the type of glass I like my champagne in.
Me too.
If I see someone's holding a flute, I just go knock it out of their hands and put a Chardonnay glass in
I wrote an
their hand.
article and I said 5 reasons not to, and I got letters like, "How dare you tell me to throw away my flutes?" I'm like, I didn't tell you to throw away your flutes. I just gave you 5 reasons to rethink pulling them out.
Gina, is this where we start to
I have flutes. I just don't use them.
That seems like the right product placement, you know, just like plug the Shambong in the middle of this conversation.
Oh my God, that Shambong, that is something if we're talking about opinions here, the cool, trendy biodynamic farmer that I used to work for brought in the Shambongs, and he would just like rage with people on Saturdays and would just do Shambongs with, like, pet nats all day. And I'm like, you're missing the point, dude. You're doing it wrong. No, I will not join you. I will be a snob in this moment.
Yeah, when I wrote the article, it was shortly after Aveline had come out. A bunch of articles had come out, and Esther Mobley had written a great article. I referenced some of the great articles that had been written, and we were in our let's see, I wrote it. Well, it was obviously, I wrote it during COVID, clearly, because I brought up hydroxychloroquine. I was just trying to think. It was I probably wrote it in the summer at some point, whenever they launched Aveline. And I just said, like, there are too many companies out there running on marketing terms. Look, Dry Farm Imports is an example that I will say is extreme. They import wines from Italy and other places. They tend to be low intervention wines. They're low alcohol, like most Italian wines really are when you think about it. They're clean wines. They are, thanks Jerry for sharing the original article. Dry Farm Imports has good wines in their portfolio. My problem is how they market their wines. They market their wines as keto friendly, natural, no sugar, low carb, and that bothers me because there is a winery. You guys want to have a lot of fun with seeing how marketing, excuse my language, but fucks up wine. There is a winery in Sonoma called Georgios. Here's my brilliance of it. It's a Greek winemaker. He gets his grapes from Greece. He spends all that money in environmental hell to transport them to Sonoma.
From Greece?
To make them as his clean, blah, 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 blah wines. He has a winemaker. I know who makes his wine because this winery claims that they can take out the histamines from wine, which is a whole nother story because the owner says his wife has a problem with histamines and he figured out a way. I'm not going to jump into that one, but go look at the website at all the bullshit on there. He says they have non-GMO grapes. Not the first. wine grapes are not, there is not one genetically modified grape in existence at this point. But he has non-GMO grapes because it's a marketing ploy. Every grape we're drinking is non-GMO grape. So, yeah.
One of my favorite clean wine claims, specifically that was cited by Cameron Diaz, was she was giving the, I'm sure most of you have seen it, but if you haven't, I will also link that because you'll understand. I'm taking notes on what to send to you guys. But she was talking about her understanding, her coming to understand, you know, how dirty winemaking can really be. And she's like, did you know that they don't even wash the grapes before turning them into wine?
You know what that, do you know what that,
bird shit, all the good stuff that makes the good wine.
you know what that goes in line with? Do you guys remember when Drew Barrymore had a wine?
Oh, is that who I'm talking about? Did she?
No. Cameron Diaz said that, but what Drew Barrymore said, and if you can ever find this, it is the most glorious, like 30 seconds of a video you will ever find, because she was sitting with the winemaker who did not correct her, and they filmed it, which means they did not edit it out. But she informed people that the way to make rosé is to peel each grape.
I did see that. I loved that.
That's pretty cool.
Brilliant. It is just absolutely like, you're like, please don't give me any more information. Like, I just want to know, like, how do you make rosé? You peel the grapes one by one.
Yeah. Does it make you insane? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Melody.
Oh, I was just gonna say, does Gwyneth Paltrow make a wine too? Does she make like a goop wine or no?
Probably.
Because I once saw Gwyneth Paltrow and Cameron Diaz at a bar in LA, like in one of those like typical LA moments where you're like, really? So I feel like Gwyneth Paltrow must make, like, she kind of started this whole thing with her weird.
They were talking about winemaking and how to peel the grapes. That's why
I've got to find this.
That's so funny.
I found a Vogue article, but like I'm now listening to like a 1 minute Nurtec pharma ad. So I'll see if this is the actual video.
It is a Vogue thing, and yeah, it was in 2017, and it is just it's like painful to watch because you're like, you know, look, wine is complicated, but wine is simple, and it's basically you take grapes, you add yeast, commercial or natural, it ferments, you choose stainless steel, oaks, concrete, amphora, whatever you want, you make wine. It shouldn't be that complicated. And if a winemaker can be honest with us about what they choose to do, I just wrote an article that'll be out next week about the Bizoni Brothers. I don't know if you know the Bizonis up in Santa Lucia Highlands. Their dad is wacky, and he basically put it on the map. Some of the greatest Pinots you'll have. And the sons, you know, he has two sons, and one of them is the vineyard manager and one's the winemaker. They're kind of like, I call them the yin and yang. Mark is in the vineyard, very hands-on, doing everything to be very thoughtful about how he is with the vineyard, so that when it comes into the winery and Jeff gets a hold of it, he doesn't have to do much to it because the fruit's so pristine. And that's the idea, is that if you take care of it in the vineyard and then it's good in the winery, you shouldn't have to do much. And the winemaker's choice is really just the aging vessel that they use. And that's why, back to the point, like Gina's working with wineries who are like that. And that's what we're trying to promote with all the wineries we find here. Just wines where it's, you know, pretty clear. If you're good in the vineyard, you don't have to do much in the winery. But sulfur is not our enemy. Remember that too, because it preserves things.
Mike, is stopshambong.com a real website?
Yes, you said, I thought this was what you were talking about, no?
Oh, it didn't hyperlink, so we didn't know.
No, that's my personal opinion. I didn't think that was like.
Let me double check.
Bernadette, what were you gonna say?
.com. Yes, it comes up. Shopshambong.com.
Oh, shop. I read that wrong. I thought it said stopshambong.com. I was like, I need that site.
No. The one I sent you was wrong. The one that comes up is Shop Sham without the P shambong.com, the one that I sent, and everybody should click on it and they'll be totally amazed.
Yeah, if you don't know what a shambong is, it's basically a champagne flute that's attached to like a straw that goes like here's
Where
the
was
champagne
this when
flute.
I was in college? I was forced to do like beer bongs.
Yes.
This is a champagne bomb.
And you're just supposed to like get ripped on champagne, which is like
Clearly,
never a good
that's how
idea.
I'm rolling.
But the acid reflux.
When you're like 20, when you're in college, I could see it. I see it.
No,
Like
think
champagne.
Think about this. Red wine, fine, white wine. Like I notice when I go to events, seminars, tastings, and I'm spitting wine because it's work and stuff like that. The one thing I cannot spit is bubbles. Next time you have bubbles, champagne or anything else, put a little in your mouth, swirl it, and spit it out. It is the weirdest sensation ever. It's so uncomfortable. So I just think that bubbles are something you just drink. You don't down them and you don't spit them. You just sip them.
Yes, you sip them.
Can I
Thank
just
you.
say
Thank you.
that I have been listening to this entire conversation and not understanding that you were saying sham bong, like a beer bong, but with champagne. And like the whole time I'm like, what is shambon? What is wrong with shambon? I don't understand. And then you like got a little finally more literate and now I get it.
Were you thinking Chambord?
Yeah. Something, I don't know, but I did not realize that it was like beer bonging champagne, which is just freaking weird to me.
That's a bad
I thought you
idea.
were saying bomb like explosive.
No, wrong. I played Edward 40 hands with 2 bottles of what's the really like $2 bottle of like crap peach sparkling wine? What Eddie?
Oh, she said Andre.
Like
I was
that
gonna say
Bellini
Mad
mix?
Dog.
Yeah.
I was
Andre.
gonna say
Yeah, and
I was
that
gonna say Mad
um,
Dog. That's like malt liquor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first college mistake. And then I also played another drinking game, Power Hour, where you just take basically like a little shot of. You're supposed to do it with beer, but I felt classy, so I did it with red wine, and that's also not a great idea. So I think just drink wine the normal way, out of a nice glass that you can enjoy the experience. But I think we're all past that point anyways.
Never heard of it.
I feel like Power Hour was only acceptable with like a Bud Light. With red wine, you'd be on the floor before 20 minutes.
I think I made it 30 minutes in, and then I immediately fell asleep.
Is Power Hour a
If you
shot
went
every
to
minute?
college, if you went to college on the East Coast, it was with Keystone Light. But
Classy, Melanie. Classy.
Vern, did you have something to say? I tried something new yesterday. Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I don't.
No, I thought earlier. I tried something new yesterday that actually I highly recommend when you want to have fun. You ready? It's a new product. It's in a can. It's rosé lemonade.
Is it alcohol?
It's 5 or 8. It's like a wine spritz. It is 8% alcohol. It's rosé and lemonade made in Australia. My friends are importing it and it's really good. So if you want fun stuff, this you put over ice or drink out of a can and then you can, drink that down. So.
Is it wine?
It's rosé and lemonade, but lemonade meaning lemon, fresh lemon juice, sugar, water, like not whatever.
Okay.
Is it available for purchase yet? Yeah. Can we buy it anywhere yet to try?
rosadeusa.com or rosade.com. You can buy it. I think they said today it would be on their site. It's like comes in a 4-pack. I really enjoyed
Pretty good.
My can
Is it
last.
natural?
I did. Super tart. Really good. I put it over. I drank half chilled and then half on ice, and it was really good.
Is it natural?
Is it what?
Is it natural?
Let's go back to that conversation.
It's all natural ingredients, like the lemon.
Okay. I'm in.
But no, I mean,
you've done a bad thing now. You've taught people the idea that natural wine is going to be in general some sort of Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, blah 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 bullshit.
Can I just
that is not the case.
No,
I wanted to
not the
for a
case.
second, and I want to tell you that I already thought that, and I think
That's not the case, though. That's not the case.
Every four-letter word for natural applies to it. It's bullshit
No.
natural.
No, I'm
Yes,
gonna
I
go
understand.
Team Mike. No, I'm gonna go Team Mike. I'm team both. I'm team both. I'm
Go
team,
go
this is
go
like
to
Meg-
Mexico
Pick your
City.
side,
this is-
Melanie.
I'm like, this is like
Go to
Meghan
Mexico
Markle
City.
and Princess Kate and Meghan Markle. Team both. No, but seriously, Allison is right that the mass-produced like natural marketing is shit, and Mike is right that if you go to a wine bar like Satellite in Santa Barbara or like some of the good ones in LA, they tend to offer the kind of wine Gina's offering, which is low intervention, like the real stuff.
Let me counter that 1 second, Melanie.
Satellite is amazing.
So I haven't been to Satellite. Let me counter that 1 second and just
She
explain
hasn't
to you
been to
my
Satellite.
issue. Let me explain to you my issue. Again, I like lower intervention. I like minimal intervention. I like funky wines. I'm not against. I can enjoy a wine that is like no sulfur, unfiltered, fine, as long as it doesn't taste like beer. I like cool, funky wines. I'm not against them. What is that famous Chinese restaurant in LA that Jerry and I went to? Miss Jerry? Jerry, you got to come back, remember? I can't hear you. You're off mute, but it was
something amazing.
we went in Venice, but there's also one, they have like they had 2 or 3 locations. Is she going to put it in chat? But anyway, we went to the one in Venice. They touted an all natural wine list. Jerry got there before me and she ordered, what did you have, a rosé? Night and Market, that's right, Night and Market. You had ordered a rosé and you were drinking it. So when, we decided we weren't going to get a bottle because she'd already had a glass and I would just order a glass. And I looked at the wine list, and Night and Market is an Asian restaurant known for really spicy food. So what do you think about, what would you want if you went for spicy food? For me, I'd want a sweet Riesling. I'd want a Gewürztraminer. I want something with residual sugar to counteract the spice because I'm a little scared.
Albarino, Trantes.
Yeah, something that is like super like going to help me because I was scared to death of the spice that I'm a little sensitive to. So I look at the wine list. I proceed to go down the wine list, and they have very few. There's not one Riesling by the glass, not one. I found one. There were 2 wines that I looked at, and one was a blend that had Falangina in it. And I thought, okay, Falangina, that could work. I'll try it, whatever. I said to the server, I had ended up writing a blog post about this because I was not impressed. I said to the server, what about this wine? And she said that the Falangina, that it was funky or dirty or something like that. It was barnyardy or something like that. And I was like, 1, that's not how you should describe a wine. And 2, that is not what Falangina should be tasting like, period. Like, done.
She's like, we've had it open for a couple weeks. I don't know. It's fine.
No, I mean, this was it.
But
and
all you're
when we
just
were sitting
wait, hold on. Where does this story go? All you're describing is how restaurants in LA generally suck, and I agree completely.
Night and Market.
But where we started was
Let me
when
finish
you hear the word natural wine, you see it on Yelp, you see it on Facebook. You should generally be thinking that might be good. You shouldn't be thinking that's going to be Drew Barrymore. Gwyneth Paltrow garbage.
No, this wasn't the Drew Barrymore junk. This was the natural winemaker who doesn't use sulfur or unfiltered. And this is a restaurant, like Melanie was saying, a wine bar that has it that promotes.
No, but a wine bar, I will argue that a wine bar that it focuses on natural wine versus a restaurant are like 2 different things.
But this is a restaurant that focuses on natural wine.
But it's a restaurant that doesn't know what they're doing.
Yes, but what
that's
you're
not true. That's not true. They have
yes, exactly. Like most of them in LA. There's about 2 good restaurants in LA.
Go to Satellite. It's so good.
Go read.
I've only lived there for 40 years. What would I know?
Look, I am not saying that there aren't good exceptions. I'm saying that here is a restaurant that touted natural wine restaurant. You ran into a friend while we were there who lived nearby, and they decided this is the only place they shop for wine because it's a natural wine shop and a natural wine list. And I'm like, not only is it not paired properly to the food, but you do not describe a Falangina as dirty and barnyardy. There's something wrong when that's how you describe a Falangina.
I agree, but my son, I agree, but let me just say that my son worked at Bestia, and the servers at LA, they're not really like, they're not necessarily that skilled at wine. They are not, they have no clue what they're talking about, would be a better way to put it. Yeah, it's really, really primitive in terms of servers and in terms of wine service. That's it. That's what you experience. That has nothing to do with the fact that when you look up natural wine, you'll be very happy in general.
No, we won't.
What you find
But, so
in
what would
general,
be,
and not so much online.
Like, so what you should do is
again?
What you should do is come grow some food with me, and we'll talk about natural, and we'll talk about that credential, because I'm from California.
Yes,
and
that would be like me saying, let's compare.
No, I don't want to play games. Like,
I understand and appreciate your point of view, but it's very different.
Let me finish my point of view. If you grow food, you will know that natural is a joke. It's a joke. So, but in terms of wine, we should talk about how the wine tastes and what they're talking about in LA. Like, what are the kids in LA talking about? They're talking about what movie they want to film. Like, let them talk about the wine.
Allison summed it up very well. To agree completely with Allison, she's taught me a lot about wine, and I fully appreciate your point of view, because I know nothing about the production of food, and I think you're 100% accurate. I fully believe what you're saying.
Food is the same as
However,
growing grapes.
Allison sums it up. What you need to understand is, just from the marketing perspective, if you seek stuff that is quote unquote natural, you'll generally be pleased. You won't necessarily be wowed. Like if you're traditionally drinking Burgundy all the time, you might be bored by it, because that's pretty great stuff. But when Allison describes stuff as low intervention, she does a very good job of describing it. However, the mass market describes it as natural. So that's
no. And here's my other big issue with the natural wine movement, and I'll say this as a movement that's undefined. When you are organic, sustainable, or biodynamic, there are clear definitions of what that means, what your practices are in the vineyard. So if you choose to use an herbicide, a pesticide, or something unnatural, you no longer qualify for these things. Sustainable has some exceptions because they're not on the organic train, they're on the what's best for the environment, not just for today, but for future generations. So if we have to make a choice to deal with a pesticide or a pest or a frost, we use what we can. Okay, those have definitions. The issue is that I have to regain my train of thought here as I was saying that, because
I'm giving everyone a 5-minute cutoff time, because I love you all. I want you all to come back.
This was my last comment. The problem I have with the natural wine movement, and again, I'm not against low intervention, minimal intervention wines, but the movement is antagonistic. I know winemakers. In our very first tasting we all did together, we had 2 shepherds. Yes, 2 shepherds in Sonoma pours their wine at raw wine, but they do not call themselves natural, and they are because they use a little sulfur to make sure their wine is secure, but is proper. But I know a lot of wineries, because they use a little bit of sulfur to preserve their wine, are not qualified as natural. Fine, they're not losing sleep over it, because they know that their practices are minimal and low intervention. The problem is the natural wine movement has antagonized and basically said, if you're not in our group, you're a mass producer. You're a ginormous producer using chemicals and things like that. And what we've forgotten is this kind of like lovely nuance of, there are small producers that choose not to be, making a wine that might taste like cider when you open it. They're making a wine that wants to taste like wine. So that's my problem biggest, is that it's a very cliquey little group with very vague definitions that antagonizes everyone who doesn't drink their Kool-Aid.
I think what's really cool about all of this is that I think everyone absolutely agrees. And what's making it difficult is like this new word. And I think you're exactly right. It's like the fad and the marketing, where it should exist in a certain extent because there's so much bullshit going on. You need this, but like wine's trying to catch up to like, actually even food still isn't there. You know what I mean? There's like labeling, there's regulations and all this stuff, but like in the old world, which is where this all started, right? Like there was no regulations. You grew your food, you ate it, and there wasn't anything you had to do. You know what I mean? Like maybe you found some weird way to add a sulfite. I don't know, but like, like it's so it just comes down to the consumer. So like having a word to be like, look, we're a little bit better than the mass-produced stuff, but marketing it or having a clear definition is a little difficult. Like, I don't know.
But you're totally right, because let's look at a big company. Let's look at a Kendall Jackson that owns a lot of brands. Do you know the ethos of Kendall Jackson is sustainability? That is their ethos. That is what they stand for. That is what they promote. They do things beyond their winemaking, but in their giving back to the community. They're all about sustainability and about, not hurting the environment. Yes, they're a huge company. The brands are, the wines are run individually, different winemakers, but you're basically going to shun this. I mean, if people want to go to a grocery store and they're going to buy a mass-produced wine, buy Kendall Jackson wineries, because at least they care about the environment. That's the thing. Like, that's why I have that issue of it's not an all and everyone else is bad. It's that you have to really know what the producer's choices are. And we can't antagonize people in the process of it. Because if biodynamic producers yelled at organic producers for not being organic enough, what good would that do? Like, I mean, not everyone wants to howl to the moon. I get it.
Yeah, I'm all about it. I think everybody's right.
All right, guys, on that note, we promise to bring all of the fire and all of the heat next time. This is standard mode of operations for us. We're so happy that our newcomers are new and you're enjoying this conversation. You will get a follow-up email from me with all of the information and more, and how to purchase more of these wines. And Slovenia is next. Slovenia is in 2 weeks. Let's keep this fire. I love this conversation. We can continue it next time, but it is 8:15 and I need to have dinner. Otherwise, I'm going to eat one of
This
you.
was amazing. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. This wine was fantastic.
Really
I love these wines.
So good.
Jeanette and Darren want to connect with Byrne because Darren's in food. I don't know if you guys want to share an email or if you'd like me to do that offline.
Yeah, because
Gina shared his email.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Can I just say who's that with the cute dog on her lap? Like
Marcy.
This is Jack.
Oh.
Yeah, there he is. There's Jack.
How old is Jack?
Jack's only 5. The big dog is 16, and the big dog can't come on my lap.
We love Jack.
Wait, nobody liked our giant crazy dog that attacked us.
I saw yours.
Conversation, right?
He likes your giant crazy dog.
We want to know Jack's tasting notes next week.
We'll start off with a dog show and tell next time. How about that? Ease into the conversation.
It's COVID. It's all about the dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. All right,
Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Gina, so much. Like the wines were amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Mike.
That was great, you guys.
You can stop.
Allison, you're the best. I love arguing with you. It is so much fun.